Hello everybody, welcome. I'm No02, and thank you for watching this video. This is part one, I think to be a part two, two-part series about the day 3 recons, and we'll talk a little bit about day 4 recons as well. Just sort of the ins and outs that I've experienced playing it. I've played about 300 games now in total on Advanced Wars by Web, and like 90% of those games have been day 3 recons, standard and fog, day or night. Do not care who I am or who I'm playing against. Day 3 recon was the thing that I was doing so I can fully understand it as quickly as possible. Here's my findings. In this video is about day 3 recons in standard, and for all you veterans out there, you're going, bleh, that doesn't work. That's dumb. You're just going to tell us it doesn't work in this video. And I say to you, don't spoil my video. Don't. Why are you doing that? Why are you spoiling my video? Though I do think I have an interesting point to make about the recon, the elusive recon in standard. There is something that we can potentially manipulate out of our opponent by building essentially the first piece on the board, the first bit of material that sort of has any relevance beyond an infantry, the day 3 recon. In this video, please check the timestamps. I've been talking about what we are sacrificing to get the day 3 recon, what we are potentially standing to gain, when is a recon even remotely viable in standard, and then I'll show you two example games. One example game where our opponent does not respond correctly to the recon, and how we can sort of ascertain, how we can glean information out of that. And then I'll show you a different video where somebody absolutely destroys my day 3 recon. He doesn't even kill it. He doesn't kill my recon, but he wrecks me. He punishes me for building it. Very, very cool. We'll see those two contrasts and we'll talk about the points. So in general, what are we hoping to gain with a day 3 recon in standard? Well, there's no fog. There is no point of building the recon for information. We have perfect information. It's a standard game. It's daylight. You can see everything. The only thing you really truly stand to gain with the recon is damage. Damage, damage, damage. That's it. Can you get damage with it? Is it economically viable in the long run for you to shoot something with your recon unpunished? And that's about it. That's about it. There's a third reason, and I'll sort of get to it in a little bit here. But beyond that, that's really the only purpose to it. Other than that, you get an extra piece on the board. What are you risking? What are you standing to lose when you build a day 3 recon? Well, it costs 4K to build the recon, which means on day 5, day 6, when you're building maybe your first tank or a helicopter or something else, you can't. You can't build that thing because you've spent your excess funds that have been building up at the beginning of the match on a recon. So you can't do that. So it's an entirely different build order to begin with. The other thing that you're standing to lose here is not just the economy of the 4K that you've invested into a unit that can't kill a tank. You also lose, in theory, 1,000 credits for one turn because you're going to be behind on one city. On day 3, we built a recon, but on their day 3, on our opponent's day 3, they build an infantry. That infantry moves out one turn sooner, gets to a city one turn sooner, starts capturing that city. You understand, right, what's happening here? You end up sort of naturally being behind one city for one turn. Because essentially on day 4, you build an infantry, you mirror, right? In the event that you're mirroring their infantry movements, you sort of naturally just end up being behind one city. But sometimes that, like a traffic jam, it sort of echoes itself, escalates. You know, you're behind one city on one turn where you normally wouldn't be. Then you catch up, and then a couple turns later, you're behind again. Because not only are we getting one infantry out later, capturing one city later, we have to think beyond that, right? Think beyond the turns ahead of us, where that one infantry now is not only behind in the capture, he's not as deep into the map as he normally would be. So our opponent is now potentially getting to contested territory sooner, or able to clump up units sooner, capturing corners of the map sooner. It sort of just compounds itself into your opponent almost inherently getting more map control unless you do something with that recon. You have to do something with that recon if you build it on day 3. When can we build it? We have perfect information in a standard game. Check out this sick graphic I made. Yeah. I was going to come up with more jokes, but I forgot them. Okay, when can we even build a Day-3 recon in standard? The first question, I mean, we asked ourselves, is it even a good map for recons? What if it all falls apart? What if we don't end up getting the damage that we are hoping for? Can we still somehow maneuver the recon around in the map and cause problems? Create an issue, pull a tank away, do something with it, right? Is it a good map for recons? Is there lots of roads, lots of cities, lots of places where the recon can utilize its 8 movement? On a lot of maps, 8 movement on tires with planes and forests around. A lot of times the movement on a recon is just about as good as a tank's, or worse because there's too many forests and things like that, right? So is it even a good map to begin with recons? Because ideally, even if you get your Day-3 recon, you go out and you shoot something with it, you feel real good about it, you never want to just throw it away. You don't want to just trade it into a tank because you shot an infantry with it. So is there any longevity to having a recon on this map at all? Because some maps, you do end up building like a recon on day 12, 13, 14 in the middle of a standard map, just because sometimes it can get out there real fast and cover some cities where your opponent's trying to sneak infantry by. There's some validity there. So the first question you have to ask yourself is it even a good map for recons? Because if everything falls apart, can we at least get value out of the recon later on? Now here's the big one. It's in red, if you haven't noticed. It interrupt before tank. Now with standard match, with perfect information, this is literally just a math problem. We know that on day 5, our opponent can build a tank. On day 6, that tank moves out of the base onto the map, and it's most certainly going to be heading towards your day 3 recon. Can it cover a base that you want to attack with that first movement? Can you interrupt anything at all with your recon before a tank gets out onto the field? Onto the board. And it's literally just a math problem. On day 3, you build the recon. You can count the spaces it can move from that base. Right? On day 4, it moves out. On day 5 is its opportunity to strike. Can it strike on that day 5? Because on day 6, that tank is going to be chasing you. On this map, on the 2 maps, I'll be showing you 2 different games on the same exact map. Same exact map. And there's actually a pattern here. There's a pattern where we can recognize the early movements of our opponent's infantry. If they move 2 infantry a particular way out of the center base, and I'll show it very specifically when we get there, we can in fact guarantee that the recon can get to a base before a tank does. But that doesn't always mean damage, and you'll sort of see it when we get there. The final thing is, this is the sneaky thing that I wanted to talk about just a little bit, and I'll example it in the first game that we end up watching here. Do we care about where their first tank goes? Though almost the natural response to building your day 3 recon from your opponent is that they are going to build a tank at the most convenient base for that tank to start chasing your recon around. In a sense, we can maybe consider that as value. Being able to manipulate exactly where our opponent builds their first unit and have it chase our recon around. There might be some value there. I will admit, though, I have not been able to find a build order that works on a particular map where, like, being able to force my opponent's tank onto a certain side of the map was truly beneficial. Sometimes you can sort of, like, prevent the tank chain, build a recon on their on your strong side, which is a lot of times their weak side. So if there's a good contrast between strong side and weak side, you can make them build their first tank on their weak side. So maybe that results in you being greedier on your weak side, being able to capture bases that would have normally been interrupted by a tank. Things like that. So there might be a concept there as far as wherever we put our recon, our opponent will put their first tank. Is there value in that? I'll leave that up to you to decide. But essentially the question is, do we care about where their first tank goes? Did I misspell there? I always look at those words. Did I misspell there? I didn't misspell there, did I? For some reason, I always look at this word there, and I always think the I and the E are switched. I'm not dyslexic, but I get incredibly paranoid about it. Anyways, we're moving on to the first example game. I intentionally have the player names covered. I have them intentionally covered. I'm going to be showing you two example games where one, our opponent does not do very good dealing with our Day 3 Recon, and somebody else who does exceptionally well with the Day 3 Recon. This opponent's build lets us run over them with the Day 3 Recon. Now, on this map very specifically, if our opponent's first infantry, we're in the green here, we go second, our opponent's going to build an infantry at the center base right here. Right here. If he moves that first infantry out to either one of these bases first, and then the second infantry that he builds gets the other base, we can in fact guarantee that we will have a recon in range of this base right here, or even this base right here, before a tank can get there. You're guaranteed for that to happen. You're going to sort of see that happen here. He builds an infantry, right? We're on day 2. He moves out, he begins capturing. Beginning of day 3, he moves out, he begins capturing this other base right here. A lot of times you'll see your opponents they'll skip this base. They'll go 1, 2, 3 onto this forest and get this base sooner because this base can be challenged by a day 3 recon. Our day 3 ends with us building the duck. The elusive duck. Mysterious creature. Beautiful. Elegant. We love it. Right? Now he's moving out to the city. You can see here we move out to here. And we are now in range of this city. The trap has been set. The day 3 recon looks like it's guaranteed to get damage. And I do believe if you end up going first in this matchup, you can actually park the recon on top of the city before they get there or something like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Now, typically, this is where your opponent builds a tank. He does not. He builds a helicopter. We'll talk about maybe this might be relevant or not. But typically, your opponent builds a tank right here at the center base. If we assume that to be the case, tank there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He gets stuck right here, all right? Because our opponent would normally have built a tank, and this is our turn. We're capturing stuff, right? We're doing our thing. And the recon moves in and gets the attack off. Right? On his day 6, the beginning of his day 6, that tank, in theory, would then move out to this bridge, where we then heroically retreat our recon away. Our opponent did not do that, though. They built a helicopter. We built an anti-air. But we're mostly just following the lifespan of this recon. And you'll just sort of see at this point in time, you don't build the tank to deal with the recon just gets to drive around and shoot stuff. We're going to move it down. Right? We moved the recon down. We built an anti-air. Everything's covered. This infantry shoots that infantry. It's all literally covered. Helicopter so early. We're not here to critique that necessarily, but usually you build a tank to chase the recon because the tank ultimately has the best chance of just sort of catching it. Helicopter too, I guess, but it's just a weird choice. Builds a mech at this point. I don't know what the build order is going on here. Don't know what's happening here. Important to note, this will not accurately reflect what standard matches will look like when you build a day 3 recon. It just doesn't happen like this. He finally builds a tank. This recon, though, is in range in the city down here. We'll go down there and we'll shoot it. We've interrupted 2 cities. Got a kill. This recon is a hero. Right? And since we just move around, I think we don't even move the recon. We keep it literally right here. You have to bring your tank down to deal with it. Now that it's here, we just drive away. Recon's doing his thing. The recon gets involved, I think. I can't remember what happens here. Yeah, this is his turn. Yeah, recon interrupts another capture. It's all falling apart here. This tank can't reach this artillery, I'm pretty sure. Unless he kills his infantry, which he totally can with the recon, I believe. But either way, got the helicopter here. He's got no anti-air. It's all falling apart for him. I can't remember when this tank's life, or this recon's life, comes to an end. Recon's still alive. Recon's still alive. The recon is still alive. Recon's still alive. We heal the recon because it deserves a break. Right. We get a capture victory. The recon interrupted. Capture, interrupted a capture, interrupted a capture. It was part of the wall, part of the meat shield, was involved in the fighting. But you would never truly ever see that. It's important to say, this game will truly never reflect what high-level standard games will look like if somebody ends up building a Day-3 Recon. It's just never going to look like this. But why am I showing you this game then? Remember that thing I said about, do we care about where they put their first tank? Not only that, building the Day-3 Recon has us taking initiative, good or bad. We are ahead in material on the board. As far as pieces that can do stuff, we're ahead in it. And our opponent won't be able to do anything about it until Day 5, Day 6. We can manipulate where they put their first tank, in theory. And if there's value in that, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Up to you to find out, because I don't really know. In addition to that, though, if your opponent has a very specific build order in mind, like a Day 5 helicopter into a Day 6 mech, he built missiles, we won't talk about that, right? If your opponent has a very specific build order in mind that they would like to do on a specific map in standard, you might be able to just prevent that entirely by building the Day 3 Recon. This is some serious mind games here. This is probably you know who your opponent is, right? This is probably you understanding that, oh, my opponent likes to be very greedy on this map. If I just build a Day 3 Recon, we might just end up forcing him to build standard, for him to do a tank on Day 5 and just do the super normal safe build, right? So in that theory, there might be some value being able to manipulate where our opponent puts their first tank, and not only that, possibly prevent them from doing any weird builds. The Day 3 Recon might keep them honest, in a sense. Any super weird specialized builds that they have going on may not work because you built the Day 3 Recon. So that's, we're getting deep in a rabbit hole here, right? Deep in a rabbit hole. So, what does a Day 3 Recon really look like when you play in Standard? New opponent, much higher level MMR. That previous match, I think the MMR that I was at when I got that game was like closer to 800, 850-ish. This one we're closer to 900 at this point now. A little bit higher in the MMR rating. Nothing huge. Nothing too huge going on here. But you're going to see some very similar infantry patterns. He begins the capture here. Second infantry doesn't go for this capture over here. He's going for that building over there. But I build the Day 3 Recon anyways, sort of figuring that either way, we'll sort of interrupt what he's got going on here. He moves down there. We move the Recon over here. We are in range of the city. And I feel real strong. Yes. You did the thing that I expected you to do. Not that I expected you to do. You did the thing that allows me to do Day 3 Recon in theory to get damage. What does he do? He builds his tank. Of course, the tank is not in range of that city, but he does something what I thought was very brilliant. He did this. This is the first person I ever saw do this. He split the difference with his infantry. This infantry can go up to this city or go down to this city. I can block either one of them. But whatever one I block, he'll just go down to the other. He'll just go down to the other. So now, in theory, right, I did delay the capture of a city by one turn, because instead of beginning the capture here, what she wanted to do, he delays it by one turn. So technically, we've dealt 1,000 gold worth of damage. Woohoo! We still haven't broken even yet, right? Like, we need more damage. We need more damage. So essentially, I don't really know what to do. The question became, the tank is going to chase my Recon either way. Where do I want my Recon to go? I can't remember the reasoning that I had. You can probably make an argument for up or down. It doesn't really matter. It's all up to your game plan and what you have planned going on, right? But at this point, I was like, okay, I guess we'll prefer the tank on his strong side. We'll keep our... Hopefully we'll stay ahead on our strong side as well. Right? We sort of move on. You sort of end up... He's just chasing this tank around. Or chasing our Recon around with the tank to the point that he literally drives it all the way into the corner. He can shoot an infantry and still block our Recon and stuff like that. The Recon gets involved in some action here. Funny enough, he shoots our Recon while we have a tank protecting it. I don't know if he thinks the helicopter's coming in to save it or something like that, but we return fire. We almost kill it. The Recon does interrupt a capture here. And you can see the tank tries to run away. Our recon, though, will chase it down. And that is the lifespan of our recon in this game. Chase it down. You destroy the tank. So strangely enough, he ended up trading a tank, the tank that he built on day 5, for our recon that we built on day 3. Did we get value? Should we have gotten value? We probably shouldn't have even gotten that value. Getting that value there, I think, was possibly a mistake on his part. You can sort of see here that in a standard game, you can literally just math it out, puzzle it all out, that if you were to build the recon on day 3, you can almost guarantee that yes, you will deal damage, or no, you won't deal damage. But for the most part, against a smarter player, it just doesn't happen. Yeah, sorry about that. So, what did we learn? Is day 3 recon good on standard? I'm going to say it's probably not very good, right? The fact that you can sort of see in this game that against a smart opponent, it really does just become down to a math problem. Like, literally, the movement, does it line up? Can you, in theory, do damage? Is there any possible way for your opponent to move in a way that might just thwart that, right? You split the difference with his infantry, pretty much denying me the ability to do any damage with my recon. It just didn't really end up doing too much. And in theory, we just ended up delaying our infantry movement that could have gotten down here in the bottom left corner. We could have had those territories for longer. In theory, having an extra infantry sooner for the capture phase could have yielded more value over time than the recon ended up doing on its own. The only real value that I can potentially that I think that you can maybe get long term is that the thing I kept coming back to is we can manipulate where the first tank goes. We can potentially force our opponent to do a tank opening build, or maybe they weren't going to in the first place. But beyond that sort of like deeper thinking, day 3 recon and standard, it just, does the math work, or the math works or it doesn't, and that's about it. The only other thing too to talk about, sort of to consider here, all the way back to the beginning, is maybe building the recon day 4. The thing about building a recon on day 4, though, is that it's more economically in the capture phase for us because we can build an extra infantry on day 3. But the opportunity to deal damage with the recon pretty much disappears on a lot of maps. Like, the chances of you still being able to math out an opportunity to shoot an enemy infantry with a day 4 recon in standard, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. The only way it happens is if your opponent's just like running an infantry all the way across the map. All the way across the map, just like greedily skipping 2-3 cities. Because usually the infantry aren't far enough away by day 5, by day 6 from their base, or a tank isn't in range or a turn away already, right? So in theory, day 4 recon and standard is probably even worse than day 3, just because even though you are getting better economy, the chances of you doing any sort of damage with the day 4 recon it drops dramatically, I think, because you'll almost certainly will never get to an infantry capturing a city before a tank does on your opponent's half of the map. So that is the day 3 recon in standard. Hopefully a little bit of an intrigue with the questions about maybe manipulating your opponent's build order or where they put the tank. Some food for thought. Maybe you'll look at a couple of maps a little bit differently as far as how you might be able to do some sort of specific build order. I thought, like, if we can force our opponent's tank on this side of the map, and then we build this, and then we build that, we sort of force their opponent's tank on their weak side, and maybe they, there might be something there. But I will admit, I'm probably not a good enough player yet, as far as build orders go, to really figure that out. So I'll leave that to you guys. My next video on this will be a day 3 recon and day 4 recon in fog maps. And there's actually a significant difference between day 3 and day 4 as far as how they play out and what you can get away with and still find value with the recon regardless, either or. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see you in the future.